Welcome to Little Orphan Anime, everybody. Kotaro Lives Alone is an anime series on Netflix about a 4-year-old boy with a comically large head who moves into an apartment complex and lives completely by himself. He slowly gets to know his neighbors as they help him with his struggles and learn about his quirky personality. And while Netflix anime doesn't always have the best reputation, this is one of the better ones. Its subject matter can be surprisingly dark at times, and might be uncomfortable for some viewers, but it's definitely one I recommend watching despite some bumps along the journey. Let's check it out. Alligators, cats, goats, Kotaro. I had this whole bit comparing Kotaro and goats because of the eye thing, but then I realized that goats' eyes are horizontal and not vertical, so I guess I have to scrap it. Do you know what the scariest animal of all is? It's goats. Think about it. They can eat anything, they can go anywhere, and when they wanted to pick an animal to represent the devil himself during the Middle Ages, what did they choose? That's right, they chose Kotaro. The kid's eyes creep me out. Okay, there, I said it. I can't be the only one. They're just kind of weird looking. Aside from that though, Kotaro is a pretty lovable anime oddball, from his love of the cartoon samurai Tonosuman down to his god-tier t-shirt. Kotaro tries to be pretty emotionally stoic most of the time, but you can tell he's experiencing strong emotions, even happiness, when his white pupils show in those demonic alligator eyes. I'm joking, Kotaro's design was one of my favorite parts of the show, and when those little white circles show up, they make him downright charming, even more than usual. He's an extremely mature and capable 4-year-old, to the point where you could classify the show as fantasy or magical realism, but the rest of the show basically takes place in real-life Japan, without any magical or fantasy elements. One of the things that sets this show apart is its willingness to expose some of the darker sides of human relationships. Fortunately, Kotaro is able to build a support community out of several of the people he meets. The show's cast is not that large, which makes sense for something that's only 10 episodes long, but each of the characters relates to Kotaro in their own way. Shin Karino is the viewpoint character of the show. He's a manga artist who one day finds that his new neighbor is a 4-year-old boy. He tries to remain somewhat aloof from Kotaro, but he ends up taking a lot of the responsibility for watching over him. Misaki is a hostess who lives in the apartments and quickly establishes a friendly relationship with Kotaro. Her job might be a little unfamiliar to Western viewers. Japan has these clubs where you can pay to spend time with an attractive host or hostess, either male or female. They're usually meant to be good at small talk, flirting, and conversation. The more popular hosts and hostesses often develop a list of loyal clients who can also develop strong, usually one-sided feelings, sometimes even stalker tendencies. It's a perfectly legal profession, but it's often looked down on because of its somewhat emotionally manipulative nature, so that's why some people are kind of dismissive of Misaki in the show. Tamaru is a man who dresses and acts a bit like a stereotypical Yakuza or gang member, though this could just be his own personal style. He's having family problems with his wife and son, so he attaches pretty fiercely onto Kotaro instead. Kotaro, for his part, usually rebuffs Tamaru's displays of would-be affection. Kobayashi is a lawyer who's given the task of dispersing funds to Kotaro. She develops a desire to care for the little guy and tries to intervene on his behalf at times, usually unsuccessfully and sometimes against Kotaro's wishes. I have to wonder if her ties to the legal profession might be used to point out how laws meant to protect children are often well-intentioned but usually ineffective, just like most of Kobayashi's efforts. There's also Kotaro's teacher and classmates at school, Kotaro's parents, and a few other characters, but that's the main bunch. Okay, there's also Karino's editor, who isn't in the show a lot, but he's pretty great because he always gives reasonable, compassionate advice, even though he's pretty scary looking, and he has the driest laugh ever. Ha 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 ha. Many of the characters in Kotaro Lives Alone serve as metaphors for emotional traumas that people experience in the real world. Kotaro himself made me think that every adult carries with them the traumas that they experience as children, especially those who are abused. Also, we see this group of people form around Kotaro and protect him because he's their neighbor and they feel like he needs adults looking out for him. But would they be doing anything at all if this was just a child living with his family next door, or if he was an adult who was still being abused? That's heavy stuff for an animated show about a 4-year-old boy, but that's one of the reasons that a lot of people like anime. It uses animation as more than just a medium for entertaining kids. Episode 7 seems like a real turning point for the show. I felt like it dissolved a lot of the goodwill that it had built up to that point. Over the first half of the series, the show has built up these relationships between Kotaro and a small handful of characters who we come to care about. But much of this episode is designed around Kotaro interacting with characters who've only been superficially introduced, or we've never even seen at all, and who are clearly just going to be bit players in the series. To top it off, the end of the episode does get back to one of those core characters, only to take them out of Kotaro's life, but I won't spoil who or how. The episode really cranks down hard on how terrible life can be for Kotaro and some of the others. Episode 8, thankfully, is much better. I much prefer Kotaro as a quirky, giant-headed anime weirdo who blends together qualities of adults and children and who just happens to have a tragic backstory, rather than the Kotaro we get a lot of at the end, a mascot for abusive and traumatic relationships. The episodes in the first half have time for a trip to the bathhouse or an anime watching party, for example, whereas some of the later episodes are too busy trying to show that absolutely everyone is hurting all the time to ever show anything else. But thankfully, the good definitely outweighs the bad in my opinion, and Kotaro is able to process some of those abusive and traumatic moments with the help of the community he has built rather than the one that he was born into, as many people have to do in life. If you're thinking about watching the sub or the dub, I think you can go with either one. I felt like Rie Kugimiya in the sub was a little bit better at showing when Kotaro was happy or excited while still preserving his stoic nature, and many people who are giving the show super high scores are pointing to her performance as one of the reasons. It's really good. But I did watch the show originally in English, and I thought that Jeremy Lee was fine as Kotaro. The rest of the cast seemed to fit their roles well too, so the dub is a solid option if you're not into subtitles. The opening episodes of Kotaro Lives Alone are excellent. They've got plenty of comedy mixed in with these occasional moments of drama and these striking moments where you realize just how dark the show is willing to go. As the show goes on, it sometimes forgets to add in those great comedic moments, and it loses a little bit of its subtle touch when dealing with painful subjects. My first response was 7 out of 10 Kotaro noggins after watching the dub, but the second time I watched it, Rie Kugimiya's performance in the sub probably bumped that up to an 8. A lot of people are giving this even higher scores, so go in with tempered expectations, but definitely give it a watch. If you do, Kotaro Lives Alone might end up being one of your favorite shows of the year. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.